Hello, my name is Thomas Regan, and over the last 3.5 years, me and my wife have built a $4 million property portfolio starting from $45,000 of cash. Now, that cash is now about $1 million worth of equity, and we have never used any of our own money apart from that first time we bought the first property with $45,000. So, what I wanted to talk to you guys about today was what is the investment property that you are buying. It doesn't need to appeal to you. Like you might be living in quite nice conditions. You might be living on a beach with a beach view. You might be living in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, in a really blue chip area. You might have the standard of my house has like a marble kitchen, and it's an open plan living. You might have like an electric garage door and all this sort of stuff, right? So if you take that into your investment journey, you probably won't get very far unless you have a huge income. Because the reality is, if you're going to buy investments like that, they're going to cost you a lot of money to hold. Now, you got to understand, what does the actual tenant want? What is the tenant happy with? Because just because it's not to your standard of living doesn't mean it's not to a potential tenant's standard of living. And just because the property isn't nice to you doesn't mean it hasn't got capital growth potential. And probably like a extreme example of this would be, if you guys know Campbelltown in Sydney, it is and it was and it still is heavily. It's got housing commission all through it, okay? And the property prices there in about 2010 for a 3 bedroom house on a 500 square meter lot was about $200,000. Now, people thought that because it was in a housing commission area, you couldn't get a tenant and it was very hard and you would never get any capital growth. Well, the thing about those properties now is they're worth in excess of $1 million. Now, I think by anyone's standard, a property going from $200,000 to $1 million in the space of 15 years, which is like a 5x, is good by anyone's standard. Now, if you were trying to use the mentality of, I don't think this property is going to have capital growth because I personally wouldn't appreciate living in here, then that's where you're going wrong, because you've got to look at the other factors, right? So again, other areas that have gentrified, like Potts Point in Sydney, used to be King's Cross, and also they renamed it so people would like living there more. Also Redfern, it's an inner city suburb of Sydney. There's a lot of housing commission in Redfern, and the government is trying to clean that place up right now. So if you have a long-term view, you can buy properties there for very cheap, and they will, although it doesn't look good now, they will appreciate. Now, the important thing to know or to do if you're buying in one of these areas is, if you understand that right now you personally wouldn't like living there, you wouldn't appreciate it, you got to understand why you're buying it then. Well, for one, you're buying it at a very cheap rate. You're buying it at a low rate. You're buying it at or below replacement cost. You're buying it at or somewhere near land value. If you're buying a property at or near land value, that's a pretty good investment, especially if it's a property that you can generate income from through rent, right? That will cover all the expenses. Now, this is what I was getting into next. So if you're buying in these areas, you need to do your cash flow projections. You need to do the numbers. How much income will this property generate? Now, if not only the property has a lot of capital growth potential because the area is gentrifying, and it cash flows, and you can get a tenant that is going to generate enough money to pay for all the expenses and outgoings. That's all that matters. Like, that's what a good investment is. A good investment is not something that's in a nice area and costs you tens of thousands of dollars to hold each year. Your ability to grow a portfolio will be very limited by how much money you generate if you choose to build a property portfolio that way. And the thing about building a property portfolio, if you can only build it so big, then it's very hard to get substantial capital growth. Whereas if you build a property portfolio which you can grow unlimited because you're buying positive cash flow properties, then obviously you can grow it much larger, creating more wealth. All right, guys, well, see you next time. Bye.